Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a pretty wild theological framework, one that reframes the entire story of humanity. Seriously, it looks at all of spiritual history not as a bunch of random events, but as one single massive divine project.
So let's just jump right in with a huge question. What if? What if all of human history was basically a form of cosmic gene therapy? I mean, a grand experiment designed to fix a really fundamental problem, something buried deep within our spiritual code. Let's unpack what that powerful metaphor really means. The core idea we're exploring is called divine gene therapy. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a way of looking at the entire biblical narrative as a divine effort to fix humanity's corrupted spiritual DNA. And in the process, the goal isn't just to repair, but to create an entirely new kind of human being.
Okay, so to understand the cure, we first have to understand the disease, right? This whole story kicks off with a perfect design, and then the introduction of a catastrophic virus.
Let's break this down. On one side, you have the divine blueprint. This is humanity created in God's image, literally coded with perfect genes designed for connection. But then, bam, a spiritual virus of rebellion gets into the system. This thing causes a fatal mutation, creating what this framework calls a self-centered world gene. And that totally separates humanity from its original design.
So, with the problem established, the project moves into its next phase. You can think of this as a diagnostic stage. Kind of like a cosmic gene sequencing, designed to map out the corrupted code and get a full picture of the damage. You can see the whole narrative flow through four really distinct stages here. It starts with creation, that's the perfect design. Then you have the fall, which is the moment the mutation happens. This leads to the era of the law, which acts as a period of diagnosis and protection. And all of this is just setting the stage for the final step, the arrival of the cure.
Let's dig into that diagnostic phase for a second. In this framework, the law of the Old Testament isn't just a list of do's and don'ts. No, it's more like a gene sequencer. Its job was to clearly highlight the flaw in humanity's spiritual code, while at the same time protecting a very specific family line so that a perfect, uncorrupted specimen could eventually emerge from it. And that brings us to the absolute turning point in this entire divine project. The diagnostic phase is over. Now it's time for the intervention, what you could call the ultimate gene therapy.
So the solution, according to this model, isn't a new philosophy or a better set of rules. It's a person. Jesus is presented as the physical carrier of that original perfect, uncorrupted divine gene, stepping right into the middle of the corrupted human system.
And this is where the metaphor gets really intense. Within this framework, the crucifixion is seen as a kind of radical surgery to remove the old gene from the human system. His resurrection, then, becomes the first successful clinical trial, the perfect prototype of a completely new kind of human life.
But, a single perfect sample isn't the end goal. Not even close. The project's next phase is all about replication, taking that perfect genetic code and growing an entire new population from it.
So, you might be asking, how does this new gene actually spread? Well, the idea here is that the Holy Spirit acts as the delivery mechanism. It implants this divine gene, which gets described as a seed of rebirth, directly into individuals who are willing to accept this therapy.
The path for someone to receive this treatment is laid out in 3 basic steps. First, you have to acknowledge the failure of the old gene, that the original code is broken. Second, you accept the clearing procedure of the cross. And third, you invite the implantation of the new gene.
So, what's the end result of all this on a bigger scale? Well, the church gets completely redefined in this view. It's not seen as an organization or an institution. It's seen as the collective result of the therapy, a new community, almost like a new human race, all sharing the exact same spiritual DNA.
But the project still isn't finished. There's one final, future-focused stage. It's about taking this new humanity and giving it a final system upgrade and a brand new environment to live in.
So the end game here involves 2 massive final steps. First, a physical upgrade for the bodies of believers, making them fully compatible with their new inner nature. And second, the creation of a completely new environment, a new heaven and a new earth. This new ecosystem is specifically designed for this new humanity, and it's guaranteed to be 100% free from the old virus.
So, when you boil it all down, the critical takeaway from this whole framework is this: it completely shifts the focus. In this view, what ultimately determines your place in the future isn't about your religion, your culture, or even how good of a person you try to be. It all comes down to one fundamental thing:
the very nature of your spiritual DNA.
And that leaves us with one last, massive question to chew on. If the entire story of humanity is actually a divine project to create a new kind of human, well, how does that redefine our purpose, our destiny? What does that mean for how we see ourselves and our collective future? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.